They called it a bluff. 312 alien species, 42 star systems, one unified galactic trade council, the most powerful political body in the known universe. And every single one of them looked at humanity's final warning and laughed. They said we were too small, too primitive, too emotional to ever follow through. They were wrong. What happened next shook the stars. It ended careers, toppled empires, and carved humanity's name into every war archive in the galaxy, not as a footnote, but as the first line of every chapter that came after. My name is Monster HFY, and tonight we're telling the story of the day the galaxy decided to test us, and the day we made sure they'd never forget the answer. If you love humanity showing the universe what we're made of, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because we're just getting started. Drop a comment below. Do you think the galaxy deserved what was coming? Let's find out together. Now, let's move forward into the trial that changed everything. The date was 2387. Humanity had been a member of the Galactic Trade Council for 43 years. In that time, we'd built 12 colony worlds, opened 17 trade routes, and signed 8 peace accords. We played by the rules, every single time, but the Council had a different plan for us, and they were about to find out exactly what happens when you push humans past the point of no return. Commander James Harlow had not slept in 31 hours. He sat at the head of the briefing table, aboard the UES Ironwall, a heavy intelligence cruiser currently parked at the edge of the Keth Nebula, far enough from Council space to avoid political complications, close enough to watch everything unfold in real time. The holographic display in front of him showed the Galactic Trade Council chamber on Vero's station, 7 light minutes away. 100 alien delegates in their seats. Cameras broadcasting across 42 star systems. James was 44 years old, built like a man who'd spent 2 decades making hard decisions and sleeping lightly afterward. His hair was starting to go gray at the temples. He had the kind of eyes that didn't blink much in crisis situations, not because he was cold, but because blinking felt like missing something. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Ryan Caldwell, set a coffee mug in front of him without being asked. James picked it up and didn't drink it. He just held it. "They're about to read our final notice," Caldwell said quietly. "I know." On the display, a tall alien figure rose from the central podium. The Krethvel ambassador, Delegate Usorva, was exactly the kind of politician James had spent his career learning to distrust. 7 feet of bioluminescent gray skin, 4 articulated fingers on each hand, and eyes like polished amber that caught the chamber light in ways that always made her look amused. She was the Galactic Council's chief diplomatic architect. She had engineered every trade agreement humanity had signed in the last decade. She had also, according to classified intelligence James had personally reviewed, been the one who authorized the annexation of Frontier Station Keller, human territory, human citizens. 3,412 of them still unaccounted for. He watched her rise, he watched her smile. The chamber quieted. Usorva held up a single document, the official human notification of breach, the final warning. James had written half of it himself, in the sterile language of interstellar law, making every term specific, every deadline lawful, every consequence recorded. 18 months of diplomatic effort reduced to 14 pages. She read the title aloud. Then she set it down. Then she did something James had not expected. She laughed, not a small laugh. A full chamber-echoing sound that rippled through 3 simultaneous translation feeds. Half the chamber joined her. The rest watched in silence, which was almost worse. "Humanity," she said, still smiling, her amber eyes catching the broadcast light, "has issued us a warning. How quaint." The chamber laughed again. The broadcast feed showed delegates from the Veth Dominion, the Scar Collective, the Ren Commonwealth, all of them leaning toward each other, sharing the joke. James set down his coffee. "Ryan," he said, "Sir, send the acknowledgement code to Earth Command. Tell them the warning has been formally rejected." Caldwell hesitated just for a second. "And the response protocol?" James looked at the display. He looked at Usorva's smile. He looked at the number in the corner of his screen, 3,412 missing humans. "Authorized," he said. The galaxy had no idea what it had just started. The first thing the Council expected was a diplomatic protest, maybe an economic sanction. Perhaps a formal complaint filed through the Interstellar Arbitration Bureau, the kind of thing that would sit in a queue for 6 years before anyone looked at it. What they got instead was silence. For 72 hours, humanity said nothing. No press releases, no fleet movements on public sensors, no emergency sessions. The United Earth Defense Command went completely, utterly quiet, and somehow that silence was louder than anything else could have been. James spent those 72 hours doing 3 things: reviewing intelligence reports, coordinating with Earth Command over encrypted channels, and watching the Council's reactions on the open broadcast feeds. They were already starting to get nervous. "They're running analysis," reported Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, his signals intelligence officer. A sharp-eyed woman from Arizona who could pull meaning out of noise the way other people read headlines. Council communication traffic is up 400%. The Krethvel are running military readiness simulations. The Scar have quietly recalled 2 of their patrol fleets. "They think we're going to hit them in the next 48 hours, James said. "Yes, sir, they're expecting a conventional response." A show of force at the border, maybe a few warning shots near Keller Station. James nodded slowly. "That's the problem with people who have never actually fought humans. They assume we respond the way they would. The first move wasn't a fleet. It was a message, but not to the Council. Earth Command transmitted a public broadcast to every inhabited system in the galaxy simultaneously, not in the galactic standard language. In 47 different languages, 1 for each member species of the Council, including 3 species that had never been directly communicated with in their native tongue before. The message was simple. It contained the full, unedited record of the past 5 years. Every human diplomatic request denied, every border agreement violated, every failed arbitration filed. Every piece of evidence documenting the disappearance of the 3,412 humans from Frontier Station Keller. It also contained something the Council hadn't expected: testimony, alien testimony. Witnesses from neutral species who had seen what happened at Keller, beings who'd been quietly cooperating with Earth intelligence for months, waiting for the right moment. The Council had controlled the narrative for 5 years. In one broadcast, Earth Command took it apart. "The Wren Commonwealth just issued a public statement," Mitchell reported, 20 minutes after the broadcast. "They're calling for an independent investigation into Keller Station." The Veth Dominion is refusing to comment. The Scar are furious. They're calling it a propaganda operation. "It's only propaganda if it's not true," James said. He pulled up his secure terminal and opened the next operational file. This was the one that mattered: Operation Waypoint. Classified above the level of anyone outside Earth Command and a handful of senior officers, James included, and only barely. The plan was surgical, not a war of attrition, not a punishing blockade. Something far more precise, far more permanent. Humanity wasn't going to fight the Council's war. They were going to rewrite the terms of it entirely. The Scar Collective operated 12 major shipyards across their territory. Those shipyards produced the warships that enforced Council decisions, including the ones that had taken Keller Station. Earth intelligence had spent 18 months mapping every yard, every supply route, every security rotation. At exactly 300 hours, Council Standard Time, 3 special operations teams inserted into 3 of those shipyards simultaneously, not to blow them up, not to destroy them. The teams were there to download records, the financial and operational logs that linked the Council's political leadership to the Keller operation. Proof that it wasn't a rogue action or a miscommunication, proof that it was deliberate. James watched the mission feeds from the Ironwall's operations center. 3 teams, 12 operators each, moving through alien facilities with the kind of quiet competence that only comes from years of training for exactly this scenario. Team 1 reached the primary server hub at the Scar Veth 4 shipyard at 3:12. Team 2 made contact with an unexpected security patrol at 3:18. The mission clock was running. And somewhere in the shipyard, a door had just opened that wasn't supposed to be open. James leaned forward. "Team 2 report. We've got a problem," came the voice of Staff Sergeant Derek Walsh, Team 2's lead operator, steady and precise over the encrypted channel. Patrol schedule changed. 6 guards armed 20 meters from the server access point. We need a decision in about 30 seconds, Commander. James didn't hesitate. Can you bypass? Negative. They're between us and the node. Non-lethal options, affirmative, requesting authorization. You have it, keep it clean. 40 seconds of radio silence followed. Then Walsh's voice again. Node accessed, downloading now, we're at 3 minutes to extraction. James exhaled. Caldwell was watching him from across the room. Neither of them said anything. The weight of what was happening pressed down on the operations center like gravity. Team 3 pulled out clean. Team 1 pulled out clean. Team 2 was still inside at T-minus 90 seconds. Extraction vehicle has a tracking ping, Walsh reported, voice still flat. Something flagged our approach corridor. We're going to need an alternate route. James pulled up the facility schematic. He studied it for 4 seconds, which was a long time for him. Walsh, there's a maintenance airlock on the eastern side of the fabrication level, Section 7. It's rated for vacuum exposure. Your suits can handle it. Through open space, 140 meters to the secondary hull, your team can make it. Another pause. James could feel every second of it. Copy that, Commander. Moving to Section 7. 83 seconds later, Team 2 was aboard the extraction shuttle. The download was complete. All 3 teams were out. James sat back in his chair. For the first time in 12 hours, he let out a breath. But it wasn't over, not even close. The captured data was transmitted to Earth Command within the hour. It was verified, authenticated, and then, in one of the most deliberate acts of institutional warfare in human history, it was given to the Interstellar Press Syndicate. Every outlet, every system, every species, the records showed everything. The vote authorizing the Keller operation, the financial transfers that funded it, the council members who signed off on it. The security logs confirming human civilians had been held, processed, and quietly transferred to SCAR labor facilities. Alive, documented, traceable. The galaxy did not react the way the council expected. Within 6 hours, the Ren Commonwealth had formally suspended its council membership. The Pelari Freehold, a smaller species that had spent decades trying to stay neutral, issued a public condemnation. 3 mid-tier species that had never made public statements on human affairs before called for the immediate release of the Keller detainees. The SCAR Collective's response was to deny everything, call the data fabricated, and immediately begin moving a war fleet toward the outer human border. James had been waiting for that. Fleet Command, this is Ironwall Actual. Confirm activation of Contingency Delta 7. The reply came from Admiral Patricia Hayes, Earth's senior fleet commander, a woman James had served under for 6 years and trusted completely. Her voice was calm. Delta 7 is active, Commander. Good hunting. James turned to his display. He opened a channel he hadn't opened before, one that connected him directly to an alien officer sitting in a holding cell 2 decks below. Her name was Thessaly Voss, a Ren tactical analyst who had been taken aboard a week ago when her courier vessel had an engine failure inside human sensor range. They'd repaired her ship. She declined to leave once the situation developed, citing professional curiosity, and James suspected a desire to see how this played out. He opened the channel. Her image appeared, silver-white bioluminescent patterns across gray skin that shifted slightly when she was thinking, like Aurora Borealis at low altitude. She had 4 eyes arranged in a wide arc, each one independently mobile. She looked, at first, like something designed by nature to see threats coming from every direction at once. She was very, very smart. James had figured that out within the first 20 minutes of meeting her. "Commander Harlow," she said. Her translator produced clean, accented English. "The SCAR fleet has just crossed into the outer approach corridor. I know. You have 48 hours before they reach engagement range. I know that too," she tilted her head. "Are you concerned?" James looked at the fleet deployment map on his screen. Dozens of human warships moving into positions that the SCAR sensors wouldn't see clearly for another 12 hours. Humanity had spent 30 years designing ships that were very, very hard to find when they didn't want to be found. "No," he said. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered in a way he'd come to recognize as uncertainty. "Commander," she said carefully, "the SCAR fleet outnumbers your border defense by a ratio of nearly 3 to 1. I know. And you're not concerned. Thessaly, he met four of her eyes at once. Which she'd told him was something most species couldn't do. How much do you know about human military doctrine? She was quiet for a moment. Her light patterns shifted slowly. I know what the council briefings said. And, she said quietly, I am beginning to suspect that what the council briefing said was not complete. James almost smiled. Get some rest, he said. You're going to want to be awake for the next 24 hours. He closed the channel. On his primary display, the Starfleet continued its approach, steady and confident, 47 warships moving in tight formation toward human space. Absolutely certain of what was waiting for them. They had no idea they were walking into the most carefully laid trap in human military history. The Starfleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the Heron chokepoint, a narrow band of navigable space between two dense stellar clouds that served as the primary approach corridor into the human outer colonies. It was strategically the obvious route, the direct route, the route that any fleet using conventional Galactic Council doctrine would choose. That was the first mistake. James watched from the Iron Wall's command bridge as the sensor feeds updated in real time. 47 SCAR warships arranged in a standard aggressive formation, heavy cruisers at the front, destroyers flanking, carriers holding at the rear. They were looking for a defense line. Sensor arrays scanning ahead for human ships holding position along the corridor. They found nothing. They've gone to active scanning, reported Mitchell from her station. Full spectrum. They're confused. Of course they are, Caldwell murmured. Where are our ships? Exactly where they're supposed to be, James said. The human fleet, 31 warships, was not in the corridor. It was not along any conventional defensive line. 14 ships had used the stellar cloud on the corridor's northern flank to mask their approach, running silent for 11 hours on low-power systems that generated almost no sensor signature. 12 more were below the corridor's navigational plane, in a gravitational shadow that SCAR sensor doctrine apparently didn't account for. 5 were sitting directly behind the SCAR fleet, having arrived an hour before the SCAR did and gone completely dark. The SCAR fleet was surrounded. They just didn't know it yet. Admiral Hayes' signal, sir. Mitchell's voice was precise. She's asking for your go. James thought about the 3,412 humans at Keller Station. He thought about Usorva's laugh in the council chamber. He thought about the vote that had authorized all of it, the signatures on those documents, the confidence of people who had never once believed they would face consequences. Send it, he said. The human fleet activated simultaneously. Every ship, every system, every weapon lock in the same moment. For the SCAR, it would have appeared as if space itself had suddenly filled with warships from every direction. The SCAR Admiral had 7 seconds to react before the first communications were broadcast directly into his command frequency. Not weapons fire, but a transmission. Admiral Hayes' voice, clear and formal. This is Admiral Patricia Hayes, United Earth Defense Command. You are surrounded. Your fleet is outmaneuvered. We are offering you the opportunity to stand down, hold position, and open negotiation channels. Any aggressive action will be met with full response. You have 60 seconds to comply. James watched the sensor feeds. He watched the SCAR fleet hold its formation, the internal communications spiking as their admiral processed what had just happened. 50 seconds passed. Then the SCAR opened fire. It was not a disciplined volley. It was panicked, scattered targeting, ships firing in multiple directions at once, coordination breaking down as the reality of the trap hit every captain simultaneously. James had seen it before in his career, in training simulations, in after-action reports. The moment when a force realizes it's been outthought entirely and the instinct to fight overrides the intelligence to survive. The human fleet responded with precision, not with maximum force. With surgical fire, targeting propulsion, targeting weapon systems, avoiding crew compartments where possible. It was the kind of combat doctrine that took decades to develop and required a level of fire control that other species consistently underestimated. In 19 minutes, it was over. 11 SCAR ships destroyed, 22 disabled, propulsion gone, drifting. 14 had managed to surrender, their commanders smart enough to stand down before the situation got worse. Human casualties, 4 ships with minor damage, 12 crew members injured, 0 fatalities. James was still staring at the display when Thessaly's voice came through his comm channel unprompted. "Commander," she said, her translator barely kept up with the speed of her speech. "Your fleet just neutralized 47 warships with 31, James said, a long silence. Her bioluminescent patterns, visible on the small monitor connected to the holding cell feed, were shifting rapidly. Something he'd come to understand meant she was recalibrating everything she thought she knew. "The council briefings," she said at last, "were very, very incomplete." "Yeah," James said, "they usually are." But the battle at Harran was only the first move. Because even as human ships were processing SCAR surrender signals and beginning SAR operations, search and rescue. Because humanity pulls people out of wreckage even when those people just tried to kill them, the Galactic Council was convening an emergency session. And Delegate Usorva was about to make a decision that would seal her fate and the Council's legacy forever. James received the intercept 30 minutes after the battle ended. Usorva, in a closed council session, had just authorized a second-stage response. A strike on human civilian infrastructure, not military targets. Civilian targets, colonies, stations, people. James read the intercept twice, then he set it down very carefully, the way you set down something you know will change everything. "Ryan," he said, "Sir, get me a direct line to Earth Command." "Priority 1, Caldwell was already moving. "They're going to see this as escalation." "No," James said quietly. "They're going to see it as confirmation, everything we said they were. Everything we documented, everything we warned them about." He paused. "And now the galaxy is going to see it too." He looked at the display, the drifting SCAR ships, the rescue operations underway, the stars beyond. Somewhere in those stars, 3,412 people were waiting. "We're not done," he said. The intelligence on Keller Station came through at 600, a location beacon, embedded in a fragmentary signal that Earth intelligence had been filtering for months, suddenly strong enough to resolve. 38 light minutes from human space. A SCAR labor facility in a system with no formal name on Galactic Council charts, just a catalog number. 3,412 humans, alive, held for 14 months. James had the location in his hands and a decision to make in the next 4 hours, before the Council's second-stage strike plan could be executed. He called a command briefing. Himself, Caldwell, Mitchell, and 6 special operations officers who'd been embedded on the iron wall for exactly this scenario. He pulled up the facility schematics, pieced together from 3 different intelligence sources, none of them complete. He pulled up the SCAR orbital defense grid, 2 patrol cruisers, 1 weapons platform, standard rotation. "We can't wait for a full assault force," he said. "If we wait, one of 2 things happens. The Council moves on civilian targets, or they move those prisoners again." "We go now?" One of the SOF officers, Captain Luke Brennan, a quiet man from Ohio who always looked like he was doing math in his head, studied the schematics. "The patrol rotation gives us a 14-minute window every 6 hours. Next window opens in 2 hours and 17 minutes. Can we be in position? If we push the drive, push it." The iron wall made the transit at full burn. Sensors masked by a Wren-designed interference pattern that Thessaly, now fully involved, formal prisoner status quietly set aside, had helped calibrate. James was not above using every advantage available. Thessaly herself was on the bridge. Not at a station, seated in an observer position, watching everything with her 4 independently mobile eyes, her bioluminescent skin patterns shifting continuously. She hadn't been asked to come. She'd shown up. "You understand," she said while they were in transit, "that what you're doing is illegal under Council jurisdiction. The Council's jurisdiction over human territory was suspended by their own actions at Keller," James said. "We documented it, the galaxy has the records. I mean practically. If this rescue operation is seen as an attack on SCAR territory, it's a rescue of unlawfully held human civilians from a facility that doesn't officially exist. In a system that isn't charted in Council records." James kept his eyes on the display. "That's what our legal team will argue. And they'll have documentation, witnesses, and the support of at least 4 member species who have already condemned the Keller situation. Thessaly was quiet for a moment. "You planned this," she said. "The rescue? Yes, we've been planning it for 4 months. No," her light patterns settled into something slow and steady. "All of it, the broadcast. The shipyard operation, the Heron engagement, the timing." A pause. "This was never a reaction, it was a sequence." James finally looked at her. "The warning we issued to the Council gave them specific terms and specific deadlines. It was lawful and recorded, as required by interstellar treaty. We gave them 18 months, and when they refused, we executed the plan we'd built during those 18 months. He looked back at the display. "That's not aggression, Thessaly." "That's preparation." She said nothing. Her light patterns were very slow now, thoughtful. The iron wall dropped out of transit 800,000 kilometers from the facility. Captain Brennan's team inserted in 2 assault shuttles, fast, low signature, following the patrol gap like threading a needle. James monitored from the bridge. 13 minutes and 40 seconds. The first shuttle reached the facility's docking collar at T+4. The second was 60 seconds behind. "Breach successful," Brennan reported, voice steady as a metronome. "Facility security is," a brief pause, minimal. "They weren't expecting this. We have contact with civilian population. Commander, they are in rough shape, but they're here." "All of them?" James closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. "Get them out," he said. "Everyone, leave nothing behind except the facility's own records. Download everything you can find." "Copy that." Beginning evac. The extraction took 31 minutes. The patrol cruisers noticed something was wrong at T+27, too late to intercept. The Iron Wall's weapon systems were already locked on them when they moved, not to destroy them, but to hold them. A message in SCAR standard was broadcast directly to their command frequencies: stand down or be engaged. The Council had already lost 47 ships that week. The patrol cruisers stood down. 3,412 humans came home. When the last shuttle docked and Brennan confirmed full extraction, the Iron Wall's bridge crew did something James had never seen a military crew do in the middle of an active operation. They broke protocol just for a moment. Just a few seconds of noise, someone shouting, someone else slamming a hand on a console in relief, Caldwell putting his forehead down against his folded arms before straightening up again. James said nothing. He let it happen. They'd earned it. When it was quiet again, he opened a channel to Earth Command and reported mission success in 12 words. Hayes responded in 4. Then James turned to Thessaly. She was very still. Her light patterns had gone to something he'd never seen before, slow, deep pulses like something settling. 3,412, she said. Yes, they were all alive. Yes, her 4 eyes moved, each one independently, and then, for the first time since he'd known her, they all converged on the same point, on him. All 4 simultaneously. "What happens now?" she asked. James looked at the stars outside the viewport. Somewhere out there, Delegate Usorva was still in that council chamber. The second strike order was still authorized, and the galaxy was still watching. "Now," he said, "we end it." He opened the fleet-wide command channel. Every human warship in the operational theater came online. Not just the Iron Wall, not just Hayes' fleet, but the full response force that had been patiently staging for the past 72 hours. 41 warships, positioned not to attack but to make one thing absolutely clear. The Council could surrender now, or they could find out what happens next. And in the Council chamber on Vero's station, every sensor board lit up simultaneously with the same reading. A human fleet materializing from 17 different approach vectors. Encircling the station itself. Usorva's smile, James imagined, had finally disappeared. The Galactic Trade Council did not fight. To their credit, or perhaps simply to their survival instinct, when 41 human warships surrounded Vero's station, and Admiral Hayes transmitted the terms of surrender directly to every delegate's personal communication device. The vote to comply passed in under 6 minutes. Usorva abstained. She was the only one it didn't matter. She was arrested by Council security officers 2 hours later, at the request of 3 member species who had filed formal charges the moment the Keller documentation became public. The charges included conspiracy, unauthorized use of council military assets against a signatory species, and unlawful detention of civilian population, some of the most serious crimes in interstellar law. She said nothing when they led her out of the chamber. James watched the broadcast feed from the Iron Wall's common room, surrounded by crew members who'd been awake for 30 hours and didn't seem to care. Someone had made coffee. Someone else had found from somewhere in the bowels of the ship a very old bottle of something that smelled like it had started life as bourbon. James accepted a mug of coffee. That was all. The formal proceedings took 60 days. The Keller Station survivors were transported home in stages, Earth coordinating with medical facilities across 5 systems to handle the scale of it. The facility records that Brennan's team had contained enough evidence to implicate 9 council members across 4 species in various degrees of involvement. 7 were removed from office. 2 faced criminal proceedings. The Galactic Trade Council was not dissolved. Earth's position was that it shouldn't be, that the institution wasn't the problem, the people who had corrupted it were. What came out of the 60-day proceedings was a restructured council with new accountability frameworks, an independent inspection authority, and a treaty that explicitly defined the terms under which human territory would be respected going forward. The treaty was called the Keller Accord. It was named for the station, for the people. James attended the signing ceremony on neutral ground, a station near the Pelari freehold that had offered its facilities as a gesture of good faith. He stood at the back of the room in his dress uniform, holding his coffee, watching diplomats sign their names. Thessaly was there. She had returned to Wren Commonwealth space after the Heron engagement, but she'd come back for the signing. She stood near the front, in the formal attire of a Wren diplomatic observer, which was what she was now, officially, rather than a passenger-turned-witness-turned-informal tactical advisor. She found him after the ceremony. They stood at the edge of the reception area, away from the crowd. "The Commonwealth is pushing for a joint monitoring commission," she said. "I've been asked to serve on it." "Good choice," James said. "Commander." She looked at him with all 4 eyes, that convergence she rarely did, the one that meant she was being fully, completely direct. "I want to say something. Go ahead. When the council rejected your warning, I was in the chamber. Not as a Wren representative, I was there as an observer for a neutral analysis group. I saw Usurver read the document. I saw the room laugh." She paused. "I laughed." James looked at her. "I thought it was theater," she said. "I thought humanity was bluffing. That the warning was political maneuvering. I thought." Her light patterns shifted. "I thought you were small. A lot of people did. I was wrong." Her voice, through the translator, carried something that the software rendered as careful. "You told the galaxy exactly what you were going to do, and exactly when you were going to do it. You gave everyone time to change course. You documented everything. You followed every procedure in interstellar law." She paused. "And when the deadline came, you did precisely what you said you would do, nothing more. Nothing less. That was always the plan," James said. "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. "The galaxy thought you were bluffing because the galaxy bluffs. It assumed you operated the way it does." Another pause longer. "It will not make that mistake again," James nodded. He looked across the room, at the signed documents on the table, at the faces of delegates who'd come here because they had no other options, at the stars visible through the station's main viewport. 3,412 people were home. The ones who'd authorized what happened to them were facing courts. The galaxy had a new treaty, a new monitoring commission, and a very long memory. It wasn't a perfect outcome. War never produces those. There were injuries that would take years to heal, trust that would take longer, political damage that would ripple through the council for a generation. James knew all of that. He sat with it the way you sit with anything that's real, but the Keller Accord was signed. The people were home. And somewhere in 42 star systems, the broadcast record of everything that had happened, every warning, every decision, every consequence, was archived and accessible and permanent. Before he left the ceremony, a junior aide handed James a printed copy of the final treaty text. It was a formality. He'd read the digital version 3 times, but he took it. He looked at the last line, the clause that had been debated longest and hardest. The one that 6 species had pushed back on until Earth's legal team simply refused to move. It read, "Any future violation of the terms of this accord shall be treated as a formal act of aggression against Earth and its territories, with the full weight of human military and legal response to follow." This warning is specific, lawful, and recorded. James folded the paper, put it in his jacket pocket. Outside the viewport, the stars waited, vast and political, and a little less certain than they'd been 60 days ago about what humans were. The galaxy had called it a bluff. Humanity had called it a promise. There is a difference, and now, at last, the galaxy understood it. And that is the story of the day the Galactic Trade Council decided to test us, and the day we made absolutely certain they'd never forget what we showed them. If this story hit you the way it hit me writing it, drop a comment below. I want to know your favorite moment. Was it the Heron choke point ambush, the Keller rescue, or that final line of the Keller Accord? Tell me, let's talk about it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear a good HFY story today. And if you haven't subscribed to Monster HFY yet, what are you waiting for? We do this every week. Stories like this one told the way they deserve to be told. Until next time, stay dangerous, stay human.